Welcome in to week 8 of the college football season. Welcome into the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. I'm your host, as always, with the rest of this great cast of Jay DeCoster, Justin Walsh, and Matt Merrifield. Jay, we'll start with you. How are you doing today, Mr. DeCoster? How is the great city of Chicago treating you?
Fantastic. We actually have a good team in town for now. The Bears are 4-2, so vibes are high in Chicago right now. So even though Caleb Williams has played absolutely nobody, he's playing well. So I can't wait for the haters in here to chime in on this. But Bears are 4-2, so that's all I can ask for.
I mean, as a resident Packers owner here, the Packers also sit at 4-2. They sit technically at the bottom of the NFC North. The NFC North is a gauntlet of a division. So shout out to the NFC North. Justin Walsh, the resident Lions fan here, another NFC North team. It's a real shame Matt's not a Vikings fan because we could have just done the whole NFC North here, but here we are anyways. J Walsh, how are you doing on this fine, as we record Wednesday evening?
I'm doing all right. Glad to be a fan of the current second place team in the NFC North. Will be first place after this weekend. And I would just like to announce that if I am currently looking into whether or not it is possible to donate a shin to Aiden Hutchinson, because if so, I will gladly do so. But looking forward to the Detroit Lions trading for Max Crosby and them owning the division once again. So,
also, Jay Walsh, I feel like we do need to mention this just right off the top.
I feel like we don't.
1-4 last week. You got bailed out by LSU. What are we doing to fix that?
There's not really anything I can say except for I cannot believe the words are coming out of my mouth, but thank God for Brian Kelly. Thank God for the fact that I recognize that Ole Miss was a fraud going into the season, and I have held firm in that stance, and it has thus far not been a regret for me. But I'm looking for a bounce back this week. We've had a couple bad weeks, but looking forward to getting back in the positive soon.
And then Matt, we'll go over to you. I know your feelings because you are quite angry this week at this committee because your other committee, the Green and White Report Committee, went undefeated on NFL picks this week, which of course is very much different than college. But I believe you are calling us all frauds.
Yes, this group of young, fine gentlemen is chicken shit. And what we have been doing these last few weeks is completely unacceptable. We are the gambling committee. People come to us for not gambling advice, but gambling advising. And this is just unacceptable. We have multiple members under 500. I'm not going to name names. We have people whose locks of the week are the opposite of locks. They are doomed before they even kick off. They are sometimes being picked before we get to Fridays. I'm not naming names here. I've fallen victim to some bad weeks. We all have, but damn it, this is just unacceptable, people. And we need to be better. And that starts from everywhere. That starts from myself, the namesake of this show and the sports book, up to Nick Burt, who's actually having a good year and has actually hit a parlay, but that's beside the point. Jay Walsh, myself, we have to step it into gear, get back to 500, and then start betting some winning football here. We need to get back to winning ways because you're right, Nick. The Green and White Report might be dethroning us as the official gambling advisory of the world, because the Green and White Report, as a group of 4 people through 5 weeks of NFL football, is hitting a 75% rate. You can't beat those numbers. This week we technically went 12-0. It was 10-0 because 2 of us had the same pick, but in our 3, but we went 12-0, 10-0 on 10 for 10 on picks. We need to strive for that. I know we usually pick about 5 games a week, and hitting a 5-leg parlay is really hard to do, and you probably might do once a year. But we need to be better. We need to be better as a group, and I believe in us. We're at the halfway point of the season. We can turn this around. It's homecoming for Michigan State. We're going to hit the second half hard, but right now we need to sell at the deadline. We need to sell off our assets, and I don't want to do that. maybe we pull off a Scott Harris and we somehow we sell JDC off and the team turns out to be better for it. If that's what we have to do, Jay, I'm willing to do it. But we need to get back to winning ways.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot, Coach. And second of all,
hey, that means you're Jack Flaherty.
No,
that's pretty good. He's still going to win a World Series. So,
okay. I was also going to say, I think all of the NFL games, I think almost every single favor hit. When is the next time that's going to happen? Because the NFL is very hard to pick and very unpredictable league. When do you think is the next time all the favorites are going to hit?
The Colts weren't favored. Damn it! Put some respect on Joe Flacco's name. They were 2.5-point dogs, and they went out and won. QB1 Joe Flacco, baby. AR-15 the bomb. But you're not wrong.
Joe Flacco elite?
Win this week.
Joe Flacco is elite.
Hasn't always been elite, but he's been elite quite often.
He was elite last year, I can tell you that. I do have to ask you this, Matt, since you just made the comparison. If we're selling at the deadline and we're going on a Scott Harris, Gritty Tiggs, or Tigers, whatever you want to call run, does this mean we're losing to Cleveland in the wild card?
I don't know who Cleveland would be in this scenario, so I can't comment on that. But maybe we very well could. If there's an NHL gambling committee out there, they might knock us off come March. But that's then that we're in the here and now, and we need to do what's best for this committee and some systemic changes. The front office needs to take a long look in the mirror and decide what kind of ball club we want to be.
All I know is if there is a Cleveland Guardians equivalent committee out there, whoever their Stephen Kwan is, I'm going to punch them in the face.
Stephen Kwan, the GOAT. Always on base. He is always on base. Also, before we really get underway here, I just wanted to shout out the Coyotes. RIP. That has nothing to do with college football, but hockey season very much underway. Shout out the Coyotes, who are very much dead. Most likely not coming back anytime soon, no matter how much Gary Bettman wants it. But feel like we should get straight into the football here. But before we get to the football, it is the second week we are doing this, the J Walsh Rankings, back and better than ever. And last week, I did hear from some people that said, J Walsh, you're going too long. So we are bringing it down this week. We're making it quick and simple for the people because I'll just come out and name names. My mother was not thrilled with the rankings because Michigan were not in there. So,
well, I would just like to, reiterate the point that we made last week, which is if you disagree with the rankings or have any issues with them at all, you're wrong. But that's okay because we're going to get through it a little bit quicker this week. I acknowledge hands up that I took a little bit too long last week in some of my long-winded explanations. So we are just going to hop right into it. And again, this is not a predictive measure. It is what do you got right now? So starting off, number 15, we have Clemson. New to the rankings.
Oh, we got to do the group of five first.
That's true. We do have to do the group of five first. Top ranked group of five team is the same as last week, Boise State. Not really any surprise there. No one's really going to unseat them for a while. Number 15, we have Clemson, as I said, new to the rankings. Number 14, we have Indiana, dropping one spot on a bye week. They've got an opportunity this week. Tennessee comes in at number 13, dropping after a pretty bad loss to Arkansas and then a very uninspiring performance against a bad Florida team. Number 12, we have Notre Dame. Then coming in, again, new to the rankings, number 11, we have LSU coming off a big win against Ole Miss. They earned their way into the rankings. Number 10, we have Texas A&M sticking right about around that spot at the number 10. Number 9, we have Miami, who has dropped down a little bit because of a couple lackluster performances, but they are still undefeated, so they deserve a top 10 spot. Coming in at number 8, we have BYU, who has moved up a little bit. And then we have Iowa State, who has also moved up into the number 3 spot in terms of the top 3 or the top 4 conference champions. So they are technically the number 3 seed. Number 6, we have Georgia. Number 5, we have Alabama. And I would just like to say at this point forward, we're fairly similar with the AP poll. The AP poll kind of got it right this week. Number 4, we have Ohio State. Number 3, we have Penn State. Number 2, we have Oregon. And I really did think about putting them number 1 because of that win over Ohio State. But I had to stick with my number 1, Texas, and just because they've been dominating opponents this year. So with that being said, the top 4 conference champions are Texas, Oregon, Iowa State, Miami, in that order. And the seed matchups that we've got, number 8 versus number 9, Georgia versus BYU. Georgia versus BYU. Number 5 versus number 12, we have Penn State and Boise State. Number 6 and number 11, we have Ohio State and LSU. And then number 7 and number 10, we have Alabama and Texas A&M, with the first 4 teams being left out of the playoff being Notre Dame, Tennessee, Indiana, and Clemson. So with that being said, I will open the floor to you guys for any thoughts.
Well, first off, the phrase "got it right" and the AP poll never go together, and I'm sickened that you even mentioned that. But my true complaints, not as much as last week. I do respect the top, like the top 16. I do think these are the top 15 teams in the country. In terms of now looking at it in terms of a playoff, I think Clemson and maybe I think Clemson is one of the top 12 teams in the country. I am very much on the K Klubnik train, and I think as the next couple weeks go by, I think you will eventually come around on it. So I'm not going to push too hard because I think inevitably you'll just accept that Dabo Swinney might be back, and maybe that's a precursor to a certain college basketball team being back this year. Nick, more on that later. But I think the 2 teams that are in the top 12 that I have an issue with, I guess, I don't think A&M or LSU. I don't think LSU is any good. Like, yes, Ole Miss is fraudulent, but LSU is right there with them. And there's a reason that LSU was dead to rights and going into that 4th quarter. Otherwise, I don't have too many complaints. I don't think Penn State should be ahead of Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia, because I think Penn State really hasn't looked impressive enough, in my opinion, in the eye test, which I still stand by. But otherwise, there's still plenty of time for you to kind of adjust your rankings. But I don't have any serious complaints, Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with Matt. I don't think Penn State's. I mean, they're good, but they're not like. I think Ohio State's above them. I mean, Penn State tried to give away that game on Saturday. I mean, we'll see against Ohio State in about a month how they look. But I would take Ohio State over Penn State. I also would. I'd probably push down Bama a little bit. Bama's secondary looks awful. They don't look good right now at all. So I'd probably push Bama down just a little bit, maybe that 8 or 9 seed. They just don't look very good right now. So I'd probably put Bama at 8. But overall, I would probably agree. I don't really have any big complaints. I just think Penn State a little overrated right now. So
now I want to ask you, J Walsh, because Jay kind of just brought it up. When you were going through the rankings this week, was there like any chance you were going to drop Alabama after that just god-awful performance against South Carolina, or are you strictly keeping them ahead of Georgia because of that head-to-head matchup?
So I did think really hard about it. This week's rankings were very difficult to formulate because I think the separation between the top kind of 4 teams in the rankings versus everyone else, I think there's quite a bit of separation there. So, and then after that, I think everyone has arguments to be ahead. I do keep Alabama in that 5 spot, in that 7 seed, simply because they have arguably the best win in the country right now. And you cannot take that away from them. They are definitely not playing very well. And I very much considered putting an Iowa State or a BYU ahead of them, but I really couldn't justify it based on the fact that those teams are not playing the same schedule that Alabama has played thus far. They don't have that kind of key signature win yet. When they both have opportunities coming up to get that key signature win, and if they do, they definitely have a shot at jumping Alabama or Georgia in the J Walsh rankings. But as of right now, could not justify it.
That was a great week for the J Walsh rankings. Of course, we get closer and closer to the college football playoff rankings coming out, and you're already starting to see the ESPN propaganda pop up for the playoff rankings. J Walsh rankings are no bias whatsoever. So, J Walsh, we of course thank you once again for that. Let's move into this week because I mean it's not a great board to bet. The games aren't as good as last week. Like that Oregon Ohio State game last week, insane. It ended up with a rule change today. So anytime you have a game like that, you know it was good. But let's get into this week. I think we got a few good games in there this week. We're going to start off in the noon window. It is Miami. The Hurricanes traveling to Louisville to take on the Cardinals. Miami is a 4.5-point favorite. The over-under is 61.5. Matt, we'll start with you. I know you won't be watching this game because you will be watching the big noon kickoff game. I didn't have that on the board because I figured you were just going to talk about it, that Nebraska-Indiana game. But this kind of does feel like a big test for Miami going on the road to a decent Louisville team. It feels like it's going to be their first kind of real ACC challenge this year.
Yeah, we've seen Miami have escape in a couple situations. Everybody remembers the Virginia Tech game a couple weeks ago on Friday night. And I feel like this year we're just waiting for every single team to kind of now have their downfall game, whether it's Vanderbilt for Alabama or even for some teams like Ohio State or Georgia. It's still a quality opponent for a loss, but just a game. Like, I don't think there's a single team in college football this year that's going to go undefeated simply by how tough some of these schedules are set by these power conferences. And Miami, I don't think is an exception. I think this might be the game that trips them up because this is a formidable Louisville team, in my opinion. And right now, the public loves Louisville or loves Miami for some reason. They're 5-point favorites or 4.5-point favorites. What do we have it down? 4.5. Some places you can get it at 5, and 80% of the money for the spread is on Miami for some reason, which I feel like this would be a game where the public would love Louisville, and I'm not sure why they don't. I get Cam Ward's the Heisman guy. I would take Louisville in the situation, take the 5 points. Miami still might escape with a win as they seem to be able to do this year. But Mario Cristobal can't keep getting away with this. He's down. He is destined to choke this away or blow it up like he always does. He had better teams at Oregon and still found a way to mess it up. So I would advise the Louisville +5 train here, maybe a little bit of an upset.
Jay, we'll go to you next. Louisville, coming into October, they had that loss at Notre Dame, then they lost to SMU at home. But then last week, they get a somewhat bounce-back victory over Virginia, a 24-20 win, which truly wasn't really convincing, but I mean, a win's a win. Do you think Louisville can make it 2 wins from 2 games this weekend?
Absolutely. I mean, you saw what Jeff Brom did at Purdue. I mean, you saw what they did last year, beat Notre Dame at home at night at Louisville. I mean, this team is scrappy, and they're always going to give a team a good game. And I definitely agree with Matt. I think Louisville, and this is also my parlay, I'm picking Louisville to actually win this game. I mean, you can't – Miami, what they did, what they got away with last week or 2 weeks ago against Cal was crazy. I mean, Miami should have lost that football game. And even though I still like Miami this year, I think this is a hiccup game for them. I mean, this is just a trap game written all over it. I really like Louisville this week at home. I just think that's just too obvious, and obviously fade the public in the spot because everyone just loves Miami for some reason. So I will take Louisville in the 4.5 or 5 or wherever you get it. So give me Louisville.
And then J Walsh, we'll go to you. I know Matt mentioned it. Mario Cristobal, he can't keep getting away with this. I mean, the almost loss to Virginia Tech, that was 3 weeks ago. The almost lost to Cal 2 weeks ago. They had a bye week last week. Does he keep getting away with it this week?
I think they do, because what I am leaning in this game is I think Louisville covers, but I think Miami wins. I think this game could easily be decided by a field goal late. And in those types of games, I tend to go with the better quarterback, and Cam Ward is the better quarterback in this instance. The play here, in my opinion, is not the spread, because I don't necessarily love that line. The play here, I think, is the over, because Miami clearly has the capability to score points. I mean, their lowest point total thus far on the season is 38. So they're going to put up points on this team. And Louisville has shown the capability to put up points as well. And Miami, obviously, in their last couple games has given up 30 plus. So, I mean, I'm definitely looking at the 61.5 line here and saying, I think the over is the play here. But if I had to pick, like I said, I would probably go with Louisville to cover, but Miami to win.
Yeah, and J Walsh, that's kind of where I'm kind of falling on this game too. It kind of feels like this could be like a field goal game where Miami wins it late, but they're still not covering there, obviously. So Louisville plus 4.5, 5, whatever you get it at. I like that there. But I this may be a points galore game, so I do also like the over in this one. We will move on to the next game. It is the third Saturday in October, which means it is Alabama, Tennessee from Neyland Stadium. Alabama, a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is 56.5. Jay, we'll start with you on this one. Alabama, it has not been a good 2 weeks for them. It has not been a good 2 weeks for Tennessee either. This kind of feels like this is a make or break game for both teams. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I mean, if Nico Amaleva hasn't really looked that good at all, their offense just kind of looks broken right now. And if there's a game to get right for that Tennessee offense, it's against Bama, because their secondary is really, really bad right now. Giving up a lot of yards against the air, against the run. It's been a struggle for them. So I look at this game. I mean, it's at Neyland. I mean, that's going to be a tough game. I like the over in the spot as well. But in terms of this game, you know what? I'm going to go Rocky Top. I mean, you got to go with Rocky Top in the spot. I think their offense can bounce back in the spot. Nico I still really like him as a quarterback, even though he is a freshman. There goes Matt. But anyways, I was just going to say, like Tennessee in this spot, Nico I think does have a bounce back game here. Alabama, man, I just don't know. I mean, I feel like they're just on a 3-week-long hangover from that Georgia game. I mean, you look awful against Vandy, look awful against South Carolina. Honestly, Matt might have lost that South Carolina game. They just don't look good right now. I would probably lean Tennessee in the spot. I don't love it, but we're gonna go Rocky Top. Why not?
Jay Walsh, will go to you next as we wait for Matt to come back eventually, hopefully. But I mean, Jay mentioned it. It feels like this has been a hangover for Alabama since that Georgia game. And if they lose this one, that's kind of a big problem. As we look later in the season, playoffs, all that stuff, I think it's going to be a struggle for a team with more than 2 losses to make it in. But does this kind of feel like a game that Alabama has to have?
100%. And the way that I look at it is both of these coaches are under pressure to win this game. Obviously, huge rivalry game, ranked matchup. I mean, this is kind of the bread and butter of being a top SEC coach. Josh Heupel's got pressure on him to win this game. Kalen DeBoer has all the pressure in the world. I mean, coming off the loss to Vandy and a very, very lackluster performance against South Carolina, if he goes out there and loses to Tennessee this week, I'm not saying he's getting fired, but there will be people in Alabama calling for his job. I mean, they are very impatient down there, and it's part of the reason why if I were a college coach, I would never have wanted to go to Alabama following the Saban tenure, because, I mean, it's being the guy after the guy is almost never a good thing. It almost never works out. So it's it's very difficult because Kalen DeBoer is dealing with the responsibility of taking over the Saban tenure. He has to win this game. This is a must-win game for Alabama, and I think he knows it. I think the team knows it, and this is a game where the loser basically has no shot at the SEC championship or a top 4 seed at this point. So this is basically making sure that you have that opportunity to set yourself up to win a national championship. In this scenario, I do like Alabama to come in to Knoxville and come out with a win. I could easily see Tennessee winning this game, but I think Kalen DeBoer is gonna have his guys prepared going into this week. This is the type of game that he was hired to come and win at Alabama, and I think he gets the job done. I like them minus the 2.5 here.
And then Matt, we'll go to you next. For Tennessee, this does kind of feel like this is a must-need game too. Coming off, the loss against Arkansas kind of just sent it into a little bit of a spiral. You struggled against a bad Florida team last week. This kind of feels like, hey, we need this game type of situation for Tennessee. Given that it's at home, given against it's a big rival. They kind of need this one.
Yeah, I mean, I looking at the public betting on this game, I'm a little confused because the last 10 quarters for both of these teams, because even if we go back the last 2 games, they both haven't looked good. But even Oklahoma against at Oklahoma or Tennessee at Oklahoma, Tennessee did not win that game very convincingly. Now ranked opponent on the road, we gave them a little bit of a pass, but now what we've seen the last 2 weeks, maybe it was more of a concern and we should have been more alerted. And then Alabama in that fourth quarter against Georgia got away with one because Georgia was coming, and had Georgia woken up a quarter earlier, Bama would have lost that game. So, and right now the public is 80% of the bets for the spread are on Alabama, and they have given me no reason to take them as a road favorite in this game. And so I lean Tennessee. I didn't put in my parlay because neither one of these teams are playing well enough to warrant being wagered on, in my opinion. But this is one both coaches have a lot of pressure on them. I guess the pressure is more on DeBoer just because it's Alabama, and the expectation was higher, even though Tennessee still have a lot of expectation now that Nico is there. But this is a spot where Bama needs to get right, needs to get right soon, because Tennessee's schedule gets a lot easier after this. After this week, they have Georgia coming up in a few weeks, but they can still recover. Bama's got Tennessee this week. Then they play Missouri, who is tripping over themselves. Then they head to Death Valley, and they still have the Iron Bowl, and they have to head to Norman in a couple weeks in November. So this is one Bama needs to get if they want to kind of stabilize their playoff chances, because both teams are in a free fall. I'm curious to see which team shows up, because I don't know. I would lean. I think I'm going to take Tennessee, and if 3:30 comes around on Saturday and I feel like placing a wager, I probably will go Tennessee. But both these teams, I wouldn't touch this game. Both these teams are not playing well enough to warrant being bet on.
Yeah, and Matt, you mentioned it there. Tennessee's schedule really opens up after this game. Alabama's does not. They still have a gauntlet of a schedule to go. This feels like this is a must for Alabama on this one if they want to keep like any semblance of a playoff chase alive. Now, if they get down the road and they're 9-3 come December, whatever the date is, I'm sure the committee are going to find a way to get Alabama in there. But this feels like it's going to be a must-win game for Alabama. J Walsh and Jay, I both agree with you on the fact that it does kind of feel like that seat starts to heat up a little bit for DeBoer if he loses this game, because the boosters sometimes aren't the smartest people in the world, and they are very quick to react. If Alabama loses this game, I think there are bigger problems going on in Tuscaloosa with that. I think they end up pulling it off. I don't know what the explanation will be, but it just kind of feels like they are in a much more need situation. And I think DeBoer knows that. And I think we'll see the Alabama team that we saw in the first half against Georgia come out in this one. So we'll move on to the third game we have on the board. It's probably the worst game of the four games we picked to talk about. It is Iowa. They are traveling to East Lansing to face off against Michigan State. Iowa is a 5.5-point favorite. 40.5 is the over-under for this homecoming matchup for the Spartans. J Walsh, will start with you. Michigan State coming off a bye. Do you think Aiden Childs is going to turn it over 3 times in this game? Is he just going to get, his normal 3 turnovers a game in this one?
I think it's very possible. Obviously, he hasn't really had a game where he's shown that he's not going to do that yet. And I would just like to correct you really quick. This you were incorrect in saying that this might be the worst game of the ones that we picked. This will be the worst game of the ones that we picked to talk about. This is going to be absolutely disgusting football to watch. This is kind of a weird Iowa team in that they don't really have the stifling defense that they normally do. I mean, they're good in terms of points allowed per game, but they're kind of middle of the road in the Big Ten in terms of yards. They let teams kind of work their way up and down the field. MSU has shown the capability to do that. Obviously, red zone turnovers have been the death of them this year, so it's kind of hard to bet on whether or not those will happen. The big thing for MSU in this game is Iowa has realistically the second best running back in the country right now. Caleb Johnson has been fantastic. I kind of feel bad for him because he's being overshadowed by Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, who is on a basically historic pace right now. But Caleb Johnson has been fantastic to start this year, and he is going to be very difficult to stop for MSU. If they can figure out a way to contain him, hold him to like 100, 120 yards, I think they have a very realistic chance of winning this game because I don't think that Cade McNamara is going to beat you with his arm. Obviously, I was coming off a 40-point performance against Washington, but it's kind of a Washington team that was probably coming off a bit of a hangover after beating Michigan the previous week. I would pick MSU plus the 5.5 here if I had to, but I really don't like it.
Matt, we'll move on to you. This MSU team, I mean, off the bye, do you think anything has changed within the past, week and a half, 2 weeks since we've seen them at Oregon for you to think that they can pull off an upset in this one?
Well, I'll say I have very much been enjoying the week and a half that I've had off for Michigan State football. It's been a pleasant 2 weeks, if I don't say so myself, because I'm tired. I'm kind of apathetic about the team at this point, and that's pissed some people close to me off that I have zero interest in watching this football game. The fact that it's at 7:30 on a Saturday night sickens me. Night games used to mean something, and now East Lansing and Michigan State is just relegated to it because I don't even know why. I don't know what the attraction is. I guess that's a good thing for Michigan State as a brand that they want to keep throwing us on prime time. But I wish this game was at noon so I could get it out of the way and go watch Alabama and go watch Georgia, because there's no reason for this to be a night game. Absolutely zero reason. These two teams are not very good. I'm parlaying the under and Michigan State here because I don't think Iowa can outscore Michigan State by that many points, especially with Cade McNamara has not been good at all this year. Iowa's averaging like 130 yards a game through the air. Now I understand the running game has been really good, and Michigan State's run defense has been pretty ass, if to put it lightly. But I see a similar situation to the BC game. I really see it playing out very similarly, and it probably will end the same way. Aiden Childs throwing an interception out the back of the end zone, because that's just what we do here, and we're just going to have to keep living with it. But I see a scenario where I don't know. I'm not looking forward to this game whatsoever. I am obligated to go to it, even though I'd rather be literally anywhere else in the world than inside Spartan Stadium at 7:30 on Saturday night.
Well, Matt, hopefully for you, they'll have the Fly Lansing out of town scoreboard giving you updates on Georgia Tennessee, a game we'll get to in a minute. But Jay, we'll end with you on this one. Michigan State is seeing an old friend this weekend in Cade McNamara, and he has had quite an awful season. Do you think he finds a way to somewhat get anything going in this game to lead the Hawkeyes to victory?
Well, for his perspective, no, because he's been awful this year. And first of all, if you're betting on this game, please call the number. And I don't think anybody will be tuning into this game because I know for a fact I'll probably have this game on the second screen. I'll be tuned into Georgia, Texas at this point. And I mean, K McNamara is not very good. They're gonna pound the rock, and then they're gonna expose the MSU front seven, aka led by Cal Halliday, who's been absolutely atrocious this year. And not a fan of his, but yeah, I agree. I'll probably lean the 5.5 here along with the under, just because I mean there's no reason Iowa's scoring that many points. I mean Iowa's offense, I mean, the fact that they scored 40 last week was pretty surprising. I mean they're led by their running game, and then I mean their defense hasn't been that amazing this year either. But I mean Aiden Childs, whatever his interception total is on the books, I'd probably take the over because there's no way. I mean, you can't tell me that there hasn't been any evidence to say that he hasn't proven otherwise. So I'll take MSU plus the 5.5. Yeah, the fact that this is a night game is criminal. What happened in the noon games? I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that, but why are we playing a bunch of night games now? This is pretty disgusting. I'm not gonna lie.
And Jay, you just mentioned a point that I was just going to bring up before we move on. They did announce, obviously, they do 2 weeks before game. They announced the game time. Next week's Michigan State game, 7:30 kickoff on Big Ten Network, which that's the part that shocked me, that this didn't end up on NBC or Peacock, whatever. The fact that it's been relegated to Big Ten Network kind of tells you where both programs are right now. But the fact still stands that Michigan State has not played a game in daylight since September 14th, and we're going to be headed into November, and they've played either games at 7:30 or later since then. So kind of what are your thoughts on that? Matt, we'll start with you.
Well, I wanted to ask, does anybody know the last time Michigan State and Michigan were not on national television and they were on Big Ten Network?
Probably like 2007 or 8.
I would say 2012 because I don't think either team was very good that year.
I was going to say 2012.
You would be correct.
On the last second field goal.
Yeah, it was like 12-10, I think was the final scores last time.
Yes.
Brady Hoke won. Michigan State wore those awful chrome helmets.
Michigan won the game without scoring a touchdown. They kicked 4 field goals.
Yes, you are correct.
Shout out Andrew
and
Maxwell.
It was the last time. I believe it was also the last time both these teams weren't ranked playing in a game and playing against each other, where at least one team wasn't ranked. Because 2013, both teams were ranked 14. MSU was for the next couple of years. I believe that is true, which leads me to believe, and this I kind of want to tip my hand on my picks, but that's part of the reason why I'm picking a certain Big Ten team to beat Michigan this weekend, because there's a reason why this game's not going to be on national television, and that tells me that NBC truly believes that Michigan's going to lose, and it's a conspiracy, but I'm going to buy into it. Also, I have another reason too that is more X's and O's related, but just wanted to ask that question. It's ridiculous and it's stupid, and I want my noon kickoffs back, please. Night games are reserved for when you're good. We're not good.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of just how this new TV contract is broken down. I mean, you have the big noon, that's going to be your number one Big Ten game. That's going to be at noon. Feel like the number 2 game is always going to go to CBS now, and that's at 3:30. And past that, it's kind of just wherever a game lands, it lands. And Michigan State really has landed on that night game scenario for the past month. Of course, they got that Purdue game in mid-November that's on Friday night. I'm sure they're just going to be packed into Spartan Stadium for that one. But yeah, a bad run of TV times for Michigan State. But let's get into the final game on the board. We've already alluded to it a few times. It is Georgia traveling to Austin to face off against the Longhorns. Texas is a 4.5-point favorite coming off their win at the Cotton Bowl in the Red River Shootout. The over-under is 56.5. J Walsh, we'll start with you going into this. I've already seen them saying this is going to be the best college football game of the year. Who knows, it might be. Kind of what are your thoughts going into this game? Because both teams, I mean, they still kind of seem like they're the two best teams in the SEC, even though Georgia has that loss to Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, going into this season, this was the game that everyone had circled on the schedule, aside from obviously that Alabama-Georgia game. But everyone knew that this game was going to be one of the biggest games of the season. I mean, I have said multiple times, I think Texas is the best team in the country. Georgia, I think it has a very decent argument at being pretty close behind them. Simply because while I acknowledge that Alabama absolutely did beat Georgia, they deserved that victory. If they played again, I would pick Georgia to win that game because I think Alabama benefited from the hype, the home crowd, the emotions of it all in the first bit of that game, and they kind of blitzed Georgia. And then Georgia started to settle in, and they kind of came back and ended up winning that game. So, or would have won that game if it had been one quarter longer. So, I do think that Georgia is better. I think this is going to be a great game. The thing I look at in this game is how Georgia is going to plan to attack Texas, because Georgia, ordinarily, when you think Georgia teams, you think very strong running the ball, good running backs. That kind of hasn't been the case this year. They're bottom 4 in the SEC in rushing yards per game. And they are actually, if I have my numbers correct here, they are top 3 in the SEC in passing yards per game. So they have actively been trying to pass the ball. Obviously, Carson Beck is a solid quarterback. I don't think he's a Heisman candidate, but I think he is a good, solid starting quarterback. The thing that I look at here is Texas has probably the best pass defense in the country. They have been allowing 126 yards per game passing, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, granted, they have yet to play a quarterback of the caliber of Carson Beck, so this will be very interesting to see how they do against the top-tier quarterback. But Texas has just been absolutely stifling people all year long. And if I had to put money on this game, I would pick Texas minus the 4.5 here. I like them at home to take down the Bulldogs. And in terms of the over-under, I really don't necessarily love it, because I think this could easily be a game that ends up being like 28-21 or something like that. I would probably go with the under here, but I could see it possibly hitting over as well.
Matt, we'll go to you next. This is Texas's first real home game of the SEC era for the Longhorns. Do you think that plays any effect into this, any added pressure, or do you think this is kind of just another big game for the Longhorns?
I'm torn on this game because before the season started, Nick, we discussed of what the potential games of the year could be, or game of the year could be. The many candidates that we have. But every year it seems like middle of October, one game. Usually it's a rivalry game of some sort. I think this game will not be a rivalry game. Still kind of falls into that. It was Michigan State a couple years ago. Last year it was Oregon, Washington, the middle of October. It was Tennessee, Alabama 2 years ago. Just barn burner, best game of the year. Everybody needed to watch it, and I think this is the one. And for this week, I had this game or the Tennessee Alabama game, but those two teams aren't playing well enough for that caliber. I think this one is it. Typically, the home team wins that game, but right now, 75% of the money is on Texas, and I don't know if I can pick Texas to win this football game because I really like Georgia. I really think people kind of doubt how good they are because they're kind of discrediting what they've done this year. And I know they struggle against Kentucky, but when this team's on, which they're going to be on, I don't see them doing what is quite ready for that because I mean, I know they had Oklahoma last week that took care of business. Michigan isn't any good, as we know. And Texas hasn't played anybody in between. And I know they've done a good job of taking care of business, but as we've seen with the Miami's with the Dogs in this one, I think they go on the road. If there's somebody that can win this football game in Texas at night, I think it's
Then Jay, we'll go to you to close it out. I mean, this is it's a huge game for both sides whatsoever. It does have that feeling of game of the year. Like Matt said, it seems like every year we get to mid-October, there's that one game, and this does feel like that one. Do you think that has any added pressure on Georgia, given that they already have that loss to Alabama, a road loss to a very good team? Do you think that puts any pressure or more pressure on them, I should say?
Yeah, they haven't been playing well, but if there is a coach that I would trust to get his team up for a game like this, it's Kirby Smart. I mean, this guy is probably the best coach in college football right now. And like I said, I trust Kirby Smart probably more than any other coach, and I trust him over Steve Sarkisian. I do think coaching matters in this matchup, obviously. I'm going to take the Dogs as well. I think Texas's first huge SEC matchup. Obviously, it's at home. I would probably lean Georgia in the spot. I know Carson Beck doesn't really play well this year, but I think Georgia, they haven't played well, even though the last two games they played are kind of against nobodies. Haven't really gotten up for those games. I think they get up for this game. I would probably lean the under. Georgia's defense is still really solid. I think Quinn Ewers can have some problems against that defense. So I do like the Dogs in this matchup. And plus, even if Texas wins, 4.5 is a lot of points for a game like this. I mean, Texas can win by 3. I could definitely see that. But I just think 4.5 is way too many points for a game like this. So love the 4.5 in this spot. I will lean the Dogs in the spot. Like I said, haven't been playing well, but they're going to get up for a game like this. So give me Georgia.
Yeah, and I kind of go along with your points, Jay. I like Georgia in this game. I do feel like they do have a little bit of added pressure given that they already have the loss. I think that actually helps them in this game, knowing that they've already went on the road. I mean, they played 2.5 very good quarters, whereas J Walsh has said multiple times, if there was an extra quarter in that game, Georgia would have won that game against Alabama. I think that has very much helped them in this scenario. I think that gives them a very good shot of winning this game outright, and I like them in this game. So that does mean I like the plus 4.5 in this one. So given that, it's time to move on to those committee parlays. But first, we will take a look at the standings. These are some of the standings of all time. I still sit at the top after a 4-1 week. Thank you, Buffalo, for just deciding to show up this week and just killing Toledo. I sit at 24-15 with a 63.2 win percentage. Matt, you still sit in second, 24-21 at a 53.3% win percentage. We do have somebody getting out of the basement, and that is Jada Coster. You have moved up into third place at 19-22 for 46.3% win percentage. And Justin Walsh, that means you have moved into the basement at 18-22 with a 45% win percentage. So let's get into the picks. I will start off since I am at the top of the board. I will very much alert everybody before I even get to my picks. I am 100% falling into so many traps this weekend. These picks, I mean, they were kind of rough, but I feel like I'm falling in a lot of traps. In that first one, it's Purdue plus 27.5 versus Oregon on Friday night. Yes, Oregon coming off that huge win against Ohio State. Oregon has looked dominant most of their games this year. But traveling to West Lafayette at night on a Friday night, Purdue almost beat Illinois this weekend, or last weekend, I should say. It was like a 50-49 final score, which is the most I've seen Purdue score this year. I think the Boilermakers keep it within 4 touchdowns. Again, Oregon may just come out and dominate this game, but I'm expecting a letdown situation from them in this one. Second one, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Give me Army minus 15.5 versus East Carolina. Third straight week picking Army. They cover each week. They're a cover machine. America's team. I like them in this one. Another trap type game for me. Rutgers minus 4.5 versus UCLA. I don't really know why the line is this small. That does kind of worry me. I think, Matt, you told me that a lot of the money's on UCLA in this game too, which I don't get either. But, I mean, here we are. UCLA going across the country, obviously. This is like one of the longest road trips conference-wise in college football. Give me Rutgers minus 4.5 there. Another absolute trap I'm falling in. Give me Illinois plus 3.5 versus Michigan. I believe this line opened up at Illinois minus 1, and now we're at plus 3.5. It's the 100th anniversary of Memorial Stadium. They're wearing the Red Grange throwback uniforms that are quite awful, but they're still very good. Michigan's not good either. They're just flat out not good. Give me Illinois in this one. And then finally, this will be my lock of the week. It is the New Mexico-Utah State under 78.5. I love the under in this game because the stat that I have found out about this, since the start of the 2019 season, in games where the over-under is 78 points or higher, the under has gone 5-0-1 with an average of 66 points scored in those games. I love the under in that because of that stat. We will keep the trend going and go to 6-0-1, hopefully, with an under in this one. So, Matt, we'll move on to you next since you sit second in standings. What is your parlay for the week?
Well,
Bro's spitting.
I just week, but we're gonna ride it. Oh God, my connection's probably shit, isn't it?
Oh, it's very bad.
You're back for the time being.
The connection may be shit, but the picks are not. I promise you that. Lovely. Well, this will not deter me. Pick number one. Pick number one. I'm riding with Army, America's team, 15.5 point favorites. I got it at 14.5, if I'm not mistaken. ECU, their run defense, the first they didn't play anybody, and it was really good. But the last 3 games, they've given up, I think, at least 190 yards, including 300 by Charlotte last time out. Army's going to run all over them. They'll cover by 2 touchdowns. I think in some spots up to 16. I would take it up to even 20 points. I think Army's getting a lot of value here. My only concern is that they're finally ranked, but our military doesn't have letdown games except for Vietnam. So I think they're ready to roll. And ECU is not the swamp marshes of the south of Southeast Asia. Next up, we're going Clemson minus 21. Speaking of the jungle, we're going with the Tigers. They're playing Virginia, who I don't think is any good. I don't think either one of these teams. I don't think Virginia is any good. I think Clemson's really good value-wise at home. I don't see why that doesn't continue. Virginia's not any good. They're at home. There's a giant skill gap in this game, and the public isn't favoring either team too much either way. I think like 55% of the money is on Clemson, so I'm not worried about fading the public or following the public. I just like Clemson here. Similar thing with Army. The public, honestly, early in the week was all over ECU for some reason. Now it's kind of evened out. So I have no concerned over that pick. Another noon game. I'm going with Rutgers as well, Nick. 67% of the bets, 77% of the money is on UCLA for spread. Why? UCLA is not good enough to go on the road or go across country, let alone and beat a Rutgers team that has not played well the last 2 games. I don't get it. I'm fading the public. The public doesn't know shit. I'm going Rutgers here. They cover the 4.5, especially because that line is dropped. It started. Next up, I am taking Illinois along with you, Nick. Public loves Michigan. I don't know why. The public has inflated that line to 3.5 spots in certain places. 80% of the money's on the Wolverines. Once again, I don't get it. They can't complete a forward pass. Jack Tuttle is not the savior of this football team. Give me Illinois now, and at 3.5, which is where I got it. Illinois can lose by a field goal and still cover. Sign me up. Give me Illinois to cover the 3.5. I'm going San Jose State minus 11 over Wyoming. Wyoming is ass. Yes, San Jose State lost last week to Colorado State, who's not very good either. But San Jose State's a formidable team out of the Mountain West at home. Bounce back spot. There's no. They're literally on this website I use. They have nothing on the betting of that game, so I don't know if I'm tailing or fading the public. Doesn't matter. The Spartans get it done. Minus 11. They can win by 2 touchdowns. Easy. I'm going with Wazoo minus 18.5. But Hawaii, not on the island, stinks. And the public loves Hawaii in this game for some reason that I do not understand. And I have to follow my pick here and ride with Washington State. 95% of the bets and money are on Hawaii in this game. I don't know why. I truly couldn't tell you why you would bet on Hawaii when they're not on the island. So give me Washington State. They're still really good. They're 1 loss to Boise. We all know Boise's the best G5 team. I think Washington State's still really good. Give me Washington State minus 18.5. And then finally, my lock of the week. Or this is not my lock of the week, but this is a system lock. All the stars are aligning. Give me Arkansas +3 at home against LSU. LSU coming off a big win in primetime last week at home in a comeback game. The public loves the Tigers. Arkansas is coming off a bye. And they've played teams really, really well this year at home. And in general, they've played really well in every game that they're not supposed to. Them losing KJ Jefferson was a blessing in disguise because UCF football is officially broken. The Gus bus is stranded on the side of the road on I-95 in Florida right now. Give me Arkansas. LSU's not winning. LSU's not any good either. So I'm taking Arkansas, fading the public. So 5 of my 7 picks are just because the public doesn't know shit. And the other 2 is because Clemson's really good. And Army is America. And I love America. And I love the troops. And Army's going to keep continuing to win. And they're going to make the playoff. So those are my 7 bets. Lock of the week is, I believe, Washington State. I can't remember which game I told you that was my lock. I believe in all of them. If there's a week of 7 leg parlay is going to hit, I believe this is the one. All of them are home teams as well. Not picking any road dogs or anything this week. I've learned my lesson.
Well, Matt, just to correct you, you told me your lock was San Jose State. So unless you're changing it.
San Jose State is my lock. I'm good. San Jose State is officially my lock. I'm fading Jay Johnson into this.
Outstanding analysis, Matt. I mean, that's just outstanding. Jay, we'll go to you next. What is your parlay this week? You're not going last. So what is going to be the parlay that keeps you in 3rd place or maybe even moves you up to 2nd somehow?
Yeah, thank God I'm out of the basement. It's actually nice to be out of the basement for once. We're going to continue that. So I got a nice 6 picks here for you guys. I want to start with Louisville, Miami. We talked about this earlier. I really like Louisville in this spot. Plus the 4.5. It's at home. Miami's due for a trap game, and it's this one. I actually changed it to my lock. Forgot to text that to you guys. So I do like Louisville plus the 4.5. I do like to win them. I actually do like them to win outright, but 4.5 is a lot of points at home. I like them to win that, and that is my lock. We're going to go to Navy, Charlotte. Navy, the Cadets, minus 16.5. I really like them at home. They're also a covering machine as well. And the service academies have just been awesome this year. So I do like Navy at home over a pretty ass Charlotte team. So give me minus 16.5 there. Georgia, Texas. I do like Georgia in this spot. I do like the 4.5 points, even though if Texas even wins, I think 4.5 is a lot of points in a game like this. I'm a game in the year type of game right here. So I'll take Georgia plus the 4.5. Alabama, Tennessee, third Saturday in October. This game has hit the over in the last two spots. I do think it hits the over again. Two high-powered offenses, even though Tennessee's offense doesn't look good. They're going to look good in this game at home. Alabama's defense is not very good right now. I do think that can continue in this game. I think Nico can figure it out. I will take the over 56.5, and then Alabama's offense is still very, very good despite them struggling over the last 2 weeks. Ryan Williams, I think, will have another big day. The 17-year-old will have another big day. We're going to go to Nick Burt's UConn Huskies versus Wake Forest. They're at home, minus 1.5 against a very bad Wake Forest team. Wake Forest's defense is horrendous. I like UConn in this spot at home, minus the 1.5. I do think they can get the edge in this spot, so I will take UConn minus the 1.5 there. And then I actually just added this. I agree with you too. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Army is just a covering machine in this spot. So I do like the two service academies to cover in this spot. Army is like, why continue to not bet on them? They just continue to cover. They're just an absolute wagon this year. I will take Army minus the 15. I did get them at 15. I think it's 15.5 last time I checked. So either one works. So I will take Army.
I mean, America's covering machine seems to be Army. We are all, I don't know about you, J Walsh, but we're mostly all riding it. Jay, I mean, props to you. I had UConn on the parlay. I had to take it off because I was afraid I was going to jinx it. But a team that's undefeated at home this year, got good faith in them against a bad Wake Forest team this week. Jay Walsh, will finish up with you. What's the parlay looking like this week? What's getting you out of the basement?
Well, a couple weeks ago, I was above 500, had a good roll going, had a decent cushion above 500, a couple games, and then back-to-back won them 4 weeks. So that'll do it. Looking to get out of the basement this week. And before I announce my picks, I would just like to say, Matt Merrifield, that might have been the greatest analogy I've ever heard, referring to Vietnam as the letdown game for the U.S. military. That was just phenomenal, and I just wanted to make sure that did not go unrecognized. So without further ado, I'd like to go into my picks that will get me out of the basement this week. My first pick is going to be Missouri minus 4.5 against Auburn at home. That is my lock of the week, simply because Auburn is terrible. Missouri obviously had the loss 2 weeks ago. They looked horrendous against Texas A&M. Had a nice bounce back last week against UMass, but I mean, this is a game that they could play with one arm tied behind their back, and they should honestly win simply because Auburn is that bad. There's not really a whole lot else I can say there. I like Missouri minus the 4.5 here. I think if it was 14.5, I'd consider taking this game. So my next pick is going to be Illinois plus 3.5 against Michigan at home. This is a game that's going to be an electric atmosphere in Champaign. Ranked Illinois. Talk to your loved ones about ranked Illinois. And honestly, I don't think this should be a controversial take, but it may be to some. Illinois might be a better team than Michigan. They legitimately might be better. They had the loss a couple weeks ago against Penn State, but they really weren't out of that game. They just kind of shot themselves in the foot, lost a 2-score game. Obviously, they had the overtime thriller against Purdue last week. You don't love seeing them give up 49 points to a basement team in the Big Ten, but Michigan, I don't know, is even capable of putting up 49 points. I don't know how many points they're even capable of putting up. So I do like Illinois in this game, especially, getting 3.5 points at home, I think that's a steal. I would very much consider taking Illinois money line in this game. My next pick, we're moving to the MAC, the greatest conference in football. We are going Ohio plus 3.5 at Miami, Ohio. The Bobcats have been one of the best teams in the MAC to start this year. They've looked very solid. They had obviously a really terrible game against Kentucky a couple weeks ago, but that was with a backup quarterback in the game, and with starter Parker Navarro back in, they've been rolling since then. So I like them to win this game. Miami is kind of a mid-level MAC team, and although it is at Miami, I do like Ohio plus 3.5 here. My next pick, I am going Kansas State minus 3.5 at West Virginia. This is actually one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite games of the weekend right here. This is a big test for Kansas State, and I know, Matt, you were all over Kansas State not being mentioned in the J Walsh rankings last week. I would just like to say this is a big test for them. They really don't have a marquee win on their schedule to this point. Morgantown is a very tough place to play. It's a very tough place to go to. And West Virginia is a solid team. They're not great, but they have 3 losses, and the 3 losses that they have are to undefeated Penn State, Pitt, and Iowa State. So you could very easily argue West Virginia is the best 3-loss team in the country. This will be a very interesting game for Kansas State. Where I think they get it done is DJ Giddens leads the Big 12 in rushing. He has had a very good start to the year. West Virginia's been decent against the run, but not great. I think Kansas State gets it done on the road here. And then my final pick, I have Colorado State minus 7.5 at Air Force, going against a service academy simply because while Colorado State has been fairly bad this year, Air Force has been absolutely god-awful. I mean, they have been really bad. Their only win was a 2-score win over FCS Merrimack, and the only other game that they've had that they've kept even close was a loss to San Jose State. I mean, they have been horrendously bad. Colorado State has been pretty good defensively against the run, and obviously, I mean, Air Force can't really pass the ball, so they're going to be just running it down their throats, and Colorado State has been fairly good against the run this year. I like Colorado State in this pick.
Well, hopefully this is a week where one of us hits a parlay, or maybe the committee hits the lock of the week parlay, because that has it's been atrocious. I don't even want to mention the record because it's been atrocious. They are not locks. They are not locks. That's just the best way to put it. So we're going to wrap it up here for this episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show going into week 8. Anybody got anything else to say before we wrap it up here?
I just want to say, Nick, we play each other in fantasy football this week. The Eugene Beavers versus the Piscataway Platypus. And I only have one quarterback on my team, and his name is Dak Prescott, and he's on a bye. Do you want to take a guess at who I picked up to play this week at quarterback?
I'm scared because I picked up Baker this morning. I dropped Derek Carr to pick up Baker Mayfield. That's like a genuine. We're raising like the
had I. Well, had I done my waiver claim last night, had I been a good fantasy owner, I probably would have tried to pick up Baker, but I think I found the next best option. I'm sure J Walsh knows who I picked up.
I'm really hoping you're not going to say who I think you're going to say here, because I don't think that Bo Nix is going to lead you to victory.
I did forget. I did drop Bo Nix at some point this season, so it might be
You
him.
did drop Bo Nix, and I did, in fact, pick him up.
Oh, my God.
I did pick up Bo Nix. I almost picked up Deshaun. I almost picked up Deshaun Watson. And now I think about it, I probably should have picked him up because that would have been an even better play. But no, I picked up Bo Nix.
Why wouldn't you pick up
New Orleans
Flacco?
pass defense kind of stinks. He might not start.
Oh,
Which is stupid, and he should start. But I can't justify picking up a guy who's not going to start. So, and especially when the guy who's going to start over him is going to be the death of me. And the reason I square off the NFL. But yeah, Bo Nix, Thursday Night Football. He's going to light it up against the Saints. He's going to get his revenge. It's perfect. But I thought I'd let you know because the claim has already been made. He's already in the starting lineup, and the Piscataway Platypus are ready to roll this week and get back in the win column.
I think this is the longest fantasy road trip of the year for the Big Ten Fantasy Football League, as I believe it's Eugene is traveling to Piscataway. So long road trip for the Beavers. But that is going to wrap it up for this episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. J Walsh, Matt, thank you for joining as always. If you just stumble across this and you enjoyed it, make sure you click the like button, click the subscribe button. Make sure you stay tuned into the Nick Burt Sports Network. Tottenham didn't play last week, so that was a breath of fresh air for me. They're back at it this weekend. I'm sure I'm going to hate myself on Saturday morning. Maybe by the time you see this uploaded on Friday morning, maybe I'll have a quick reaction video to Thomas Tuchel being announced as the England manager. Very disappointed it wasn't myself. My application did not get accepted by the FA. So thanks a lot, Prince William, for not accepting that. That's just a shame. I want to Spifa. Tuchel did not. That's all I got to say here. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Week 9, we'll be back at it for another episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show.